All right. So, welcome, Nadia, and congratulations on this film. Can you talk to us about the production of the documentary, how this all began? Describe for us this experience.
Sure. Hey, Dan. Well, thanks so much for having me. Bronx Documentary Center is like a second home to me, so I'm really happy to be with you guys tonight. Wow, I can start from the beginning. So I really came into this project through kind of like a cold call that I received one day. I was sitting at my kitchen table and unknown number sort of comes up and I pick it up and it's a woman named Priya and she tells me that she's running the Obama's production company and that she got my name through a friend and that Mrs. Obama was getting ready to go on this international book tour and they were kind of floating the idea of perhaps documenting it, and they were looking for someone who'd be interested in directing this project if it ever became a film, but there were no guarantees it would. And part of the skill set the person needed to have was be able to kind of to work in a very small unit, in a small crew, and even alone if necessary. So my background as a cinematographer really came in handy in this moment, and also coming up in really low budget documentaries where I was, I learned how to do everything from miking people, doing my own sound, shooting, directing, producing if necessary. And so, it was one of those calls that I got, and afterwards I was like, that was a really interesting phone call. I'm never going to get that job. And I kind of just like hung up the phone. I felt honored to be asked and just kind of went about my day. And, then probably a couple of weeks later, I got another call and it just very quickly picked up steam till, one day I was sitting in front of Mrs. Obama.
Wow. Okay. So, the film is as personal as the book itself. How did you establish that, and what was your experience like being both the director and the cinematographer for this film?
Sure. So, I think whenever making a film, especially about a high profile person, the question for everyone is like, is it going to be intimate? Are you going to be able to get close to them? And so, going in, I felt like, that was one of the top things on my mind was, how do I get close to this person who, everyone knows. And I think, many of us love Michelle Obama, but we don't, there's so much we don't know, but we just love her as a person. And how do I get something different from what we know? How do I do something different than the book? And I think my first approach was thinking really as a cinematographer. And I just knew I had to get physically close to her in order to make the film feel intimate. I feel like when I watch films and it feels like the camera is really far away, I always think like, why is the camera so far? Does the person being filmed not want them next to them? Is it that the person doing the filming is intimidated and nervous to get close? And while I was intimidated and nervous to get close to Mrs. Obama, I knew that I had to sort of get over that really quickly in order for the film to feel like, it was intimate. And all I knew right away from being around her was that she's just such a wonderful person to be around. And she's so warm and so funny that my goal before even knowing much about what the film would be about was I want the audience to feel the way I feel when I'm next to her. I want them to feel like they're kind of riding shotgun with her in the motorcade. And so that was my goal, at least in terms of how I would approach filming. And that really influenced a lot of the rest of the stuff that happened.
What was your working relationship like with Mrs. Obama? The level of intimacy in the film was so strong that she understood almost like what you required of her and what you needed in each of the moment.
Yeah, I think we kind of hit it off really, really quickly. And, that was all credit to her. Because again, I was just like, what do I do? What do I say? How do I act? Kind of in my own mind. But I knew that just being myself was the best thing that I could do. And what's interesting about Mrs. Obama is there's not a lot of outside people that get to, be that close to her. So it was also it was like a fun experience for her to like this stranger comes into her life and we just chat and get to know each other and ask each other all types of questions and stuff like that. So it was really kind of this like mutual kind of getting to know each other and having a genuine curiosity that I think after just spending so much time together developed into a friendship. And so because of that, uh, it, it, I think that's kind of how the film feels, and I hope that's how the film felt. And that was just how our working relationship was, and she pretty much just let me roll with her and film, and I just started to pick up on qualities or things that I thought were interesting or outstanding, or some of it was even the way that people respond to her, and that was something. I had never seen that before. I've filmed so many people and so many high profile people and famous people and all these things, and it was just such an interesting and different sort of regard that people have for Michelle Obama and this place that she holds in their heart. But interestingly enough, even with children who probably don't even really understand who she is, because of the way she sort of locks in with people, and she has this like presence to who she is, even children are just as they just like kind of light up. And I thought that was like real fascinating.
And how did people respond to her? I mean, I could imagine, being in awe, kind of meeting with them in person. But how were some of those responses directly?
I think the responses range from, just people feeling so honored to be in her presence to, people not even being able to express themselves, or, like you see this one woman who she's almost like fainting, people waiting hours to shake her hand and see her in the flesh, so there's all such a range of responses that people have to her. And she's really great at navigating like all of them.
Yeah. So in the film, there were three mini stories. Two of them were from two students, Elizabeth and Shayla, and one for Agent Allen. What was the
And Meredith Coop as well, who was her.
Yes? What was the significance of weaving the stories in the film?
Yeah, so I think, very early, I mean, before I even met Mrs. Obama, I thought deeply about what a film with her could be. And I remember, so there were all these conversations around the possibility of making a film. And then one day I got an email that said, "You have an appointment at the office of Michelle and Barack Obama." And I was like, "What?" And I was like, "Oh my God, what do I do? Like, how do I prepare for this meeting that, especially as a filmmaker, was just the experience of a lifetime, could be the opportunity of a lifetime. How do I prepare to meet Michelle Obama?" So, this was before her book came out. So we didn't really know that much, I guess everything of that we knew about her wasn't all in one place. So I did a lot of research. I just kind of listened to all her speeches again, read magazine features about her, anywhere that I could learn more about her background, who she was. I went back, I read both of the president's books. And what I gathered from going back into like the Obama, like I think it was 2 years after they left the White House, and it felt like it might as well have been 10. I think at that point the country and felt so far away from what the Obama presidency felt like 2 years into the Trump presidency. But what it reminded me of was how much the Obamas appreciated other people's stories and storytelling. Like oftentimes in their speeches, the narrative was, "I was out in Iowa in a small town and I met a farmer, and that farm," like a lot of the way the president gave speeches and the stuff Ms. Obama talked about was talking about other people, and how much storytelling matters. And I just thought, storytelling matters to me that much too. Like my whole life has been exploring storytelling, trying to learn the craft and the art of storytelling, being moved by stories. And so much of their lives and, the Obama presidency has been around storytelling, and also their individual stories are some of the best American stories, that we have. So I walked in there just saying, like, to myself, we both deeply care about storytelling and other people's stories. So the idea that I had for her was, yes, we're going to make a film about you in this moment, of her first time back in the world after leaving the White House, but also I'm interested in telling stories about the people that you meet on the way. And she loved that idea. And I think that that's really what landed me the job. Um, so that's sort of how that happened. And, you know, that was actually a more complicated endeavor than, you know, when you actually try to execute it, than I think I knew in the moment. But, you know, I told her that that's what I was going to do. So I had to do it.
That makes sense. So much of what you captured in the film were the present moments in her book tour, and because she's the former first lady, this is now part of um, what we look back on in history. Congratulations on that film, by the way. What was it like in the editing room, and how did you put all the pieces together?
Yeah, I mean, the edit room was it was intense. You know, I had a brilliant edit team, Aaron Wickenden, Nathan Pomwar, my creative producer Lauren Chaffee, Priya Swami Nathan. Like we just had like all hands on deck trying to crack the edit of for this film because there were a lot of threads sort of happening at the same time, and editorially that's complicated. So you know, we basically put every scene and every story on a, you know, like an index card, and we wrote it up, and we would put it on a board, and we probably had every possible different combination of where, you know, a story can go within that film that we tried before we felt like, you know, we cracked it, where one story flowed into the next and it came in at the right time. And the you know, the film it's sort of like this emotional roller coaster where you can find yourself like laughing and crying almost at the same time, you know. And that's something we, you know, I think for me, I wanted people to feel the way I felt when I was with her, which was just that. You know, there would be moments where she'd be telling a story that's so moving and emotional, and then be able to turn it right around and have you laughing and come right out of that place. And she's a brilliant storyteller herself. So it was like we were really trying to match that energy that she had, and her ability to you know, she just had great timing in terms of like comedic timing as well as like emotional timing. So you know, we definitely we had our work cut out for us in that.
Yeah. So going back, you talked about having to read books, going back and reading books. What was the timeline of your preparation for? You have, like, so for example, you were notified you got the job. How many weeks or months did you have to prepare until day one of shooting?
It was very quickly. I would say it was probably a couple of weeks before I actually was on the road with Mrs. Obama. It happened very fast. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
But you know, I think as a documentary filmmaker, especially, you know, all my years as a cinematographer, I was always ready. You know, the idea is like you're always ready because that call can come that where it's like you need to be on a plane at 6 a.m. or, you know, there's some world event happening and you get called to cover it or to participate in it. And so there's always this idea of like the camera bag is always perfectly packed, the batteries are charged, everything is right there, you know. And so that was always the mentality I had. So for me, being able to like jump right in and do it was it was actually exciting to me. I kind of like that. Yeah.
Awesome. Were you able to get on the plane with her? I didn't recall any.
Yeah, I traveled with her. Yeah, I was on a plane with her. Yep.
Okay, so switch gear a little bit to kind of discuss your own career. With this being your first feature film, length project, I mean, what was the journey like to this point for you, and for this to be your first feature?
Yeah, so I you know, born and raised in the Bronx. I started doing documentary photography in an organization called International Center Photography, who had a community program in the South Bronx in a community arts center called The Point. And when I was a teenager, I was like pretty rebellious, and I didn't want to go to school, and I had like concentration issues, I think now is what I would call it. But my mom saw the ad in a Bronx newspaper for this photography program, and she kind of begged me to go and like do something productive with myself. So I ended up going, and I got really, I got really interested in documentary photography and storytelling. And one thing led to another, and I got my hands on like this video camera, and I started making short films, and that's what led me into wanting to be a filmmaker. But I didn't know anyone, and I had no connections. And deep in the South Bronx, like the idea of being a filmmaker was actually like the first, how do you get there? It felt very far away. And so I, but I ended up making the short film that got noticed by one of Michael Moore's producers. And she hired me as a production assistant for Fahrenheit 9/11. And so I got a job on that set where, I drove people around, carried bags, got water and coffee, kind of where, starting at the most entry level. But through that, I met some of the best filmmakers working in the business. And I met a woman cinematographer named Kirsten Johnson. She was shooting for Michael. And that's the first time I saw a woman, like, camera person, a cinematographer that, people respected and, like, was out there. And I thought, that could possibly be me one day. And so she ended up mentoring me. And that's how I really got started in the business. And then from there, the craft of verite, especially, is such like an instinctual type of camera process that it takes at least for me, it took quite a long time to master it. But that was mainly my goal. I just wanted to be a cinematographer, and then I did that for, I was probably doing that for like a decade, and then started to dabble in making shorts and stuff like that. And so it was probably just about, I'd say like 4 or 5 years ago, I made like my first-ish like short film. Um, that was called Gavin Grimm Versus for Field of Vision, which is Laura Portress's production company, company. And that, we won a Webby for that. And then next, I did a digital series for Topic. And then I did a short for Netflix called After Maria, which you guys have also screened. And then before we were even finished with After Maria, I was already working on Becoming. So that was sort of my trajectory, I would say, over the last like maybe 4.5 years that I've focused on directing. I've been doing that. I feel bad now. My lighting is getting bad. The sun.
Yeah, I've had to adjust mine.
Even though I can't.
The cinematographer speaks. Before my next question, I just wanted to remind our viewers today to please ask any questions you have for Nadia through the YouTube URL.
Yeah, please ask any questions. There's no question too small, or don't be shy.
So what were some of the challenges and successes you had as you progressed in your career? Were there any point where you were ready to throw in the towel? And if so, what was that tipping point for you?
Yeah, I mean, I could start from the very beginning. I think like being a PA is like, it's a really hard job. It's like, it's so hard because it's frustrating, and oftentimes you get tasked with the worst things. Like, I remember one job I had was, I was on set where there was like an equipment truck, and my job that day was to stand outside of the truck to watch the back of the truck to make sure no one stole anything out of it, which is fine. But it was 3 feet of snow and like, 10 degrees outside. And I had to stand outside for like 12 hours just looking at a truck. So it's like, it's the most, it's like, it tests your will to want, to want to be a filmmaker so bad. I think, having been had to do jobs like that, and I just remember being like, if I could just get through this, one day I'm gonna be a filmmaker. I think so. And you don't ever know if it's gonna happen, and then I also came up in a time when there were probably like not even a handful of women, cinematographers. So the idea of being hired to shoot films and things like that were, it was so far out of the realm of possibility, I think. And also this was a time when there weren't a lot of platforms for docs, right? So I think back then there was like PBS and HBO would do a handful every year, and then you had festivals. So everything was like super low budget. A lot of the people that worked in documentary filmmaking, you know, came from money because there was no real money to be made. And so it was people who, were sort of affluent and could spend years working on a project and not making a dollar, So it was so far from the world that I came from. And, now I look back at how crazy I was to still think that this was a good idea, but I just felt this burning desire, like nothing could stop me from wanting to be a filmmaker. And then, the I think as I started to come up though, the rewards are just equally as wonderful as the difficulties, and so it kind of balanced it out, and I just had a real passion for it, and there's a wonderful community of people, and I really was mentored and nurtured by some of the most well-known filmmakers, and some people who people don't even know, but just people who like figured out how to squeeze me in to get a job or pass my name along for an opportunity. And so yeah, it definitely hasn't been, nothing that's worth it is easy in life, but it's been the greatest adventure, and the real roller coaster of all the ups and downs that are possible.
So you mentioned having seen a role model or working with a mentor. Like what are your thoughts on the significance of representation in women filmmaker, being a person of color? Um, yeah, the overall significance of that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a tremendous significance in people of color working in the documentary film industry, women, queer people, like just like diversity on a whole, because there is so much of our own perspective as storytellers that we insert in the stories that we tell. And so it's important that that framing is coming from a wide variety of different types of people from different backgrounds and life experience. Um, it makes for better films. It makes for a more interesting community of filmmakers. And, I think for us there are just certain things that we know about our communities or that we tap into that, other people don't, and vice versa. So it's really significant. And I think for me, having seen women working as filmmakers, it was the thing that told me I could do it, even though it was in a technical field that there weren't very many women, and also in a field where like physical strength really matters, and people want to know that if you need to climb a mountain and carry 75 pounds of gear, that you can do it. And there's like all this, and there are times where it could be a very bro-y culture. And so for me, seeing a woman doing it and being able to see myself in that was really important. And I don't know if I wouldn't have seen that if I would have really thought it was possible.
Thank you. I have two questions coming my way here.
Great.
One.
Give me 1 second. I can't take the bad light.
Okay. Send her lighting.
Okay.
All right. So the first is, was there something you wish you could have included in the film but had to be cut?
Yeah, so I would say the answer to that is yes. But a lot of it was, some of my favorite scenes with Mrs. Obama were the ones with her family, like her mom and her brother, because they're just so funny when they're together. And I think that was the moments that revealed the most about who she was, because there's no, when you're around your family, there's like all the guards are down, and Craig just loved to tease his little sister and stuff like that. But editorially, like I was saying before, there's been so many beats in a film of like sort of the same thing that you feel like you can put in there, or you can't put like 100 jokes in the film, you have to like pick your favorites and only like keep 3 or 4 in there. So I think those were really the parts of the film, and those were they were scenes in the film that I really loved that we had to take out, just again for editorial like flow type of reasons. Yeah.
Great. And then the second question I have from Landis is, could you speak on how you grew as a filmmaker during this time with Michelle Obama and some lessons that you learned that can be applied to your life journey?
Ooh, that's a great question. I definitely felt myself transform as a filmmaker and as a person during making this film in many ways, because there are a lot of times when I was just either not sure if I could actually pull this off, if I could do this. There were a lot of moments where I doubted if I was the right person. I was like, they picked the wrong person. I can't do this. They should have picked someone smarter, more experienced, just like all those moments of doubt that come in, I think, when things get extra hard. And it's hard. All filmmaking is hard. And that can happen. But, I think I had such a sense of responsibility to this project in particular, because it was the story of the first Black First Lady. This, a historical document is how I saw it, as something that people will hopefully watch way beyond me, and I took that very seriously. So, but then I also had to figure out how to talk myself right out of that and be like, there is no time for you to like feel sorry for yourself. If you suck, you better figure out how to make it right, and just work as hard as I possibly could. So I think I learned a lot about myself, and what I guess I was capable of. I felt like my brain grew during that time, because we had to solve some really hard like story, more just like story, when you hit a wall in storytelling and you're like, how do I achieve this thing that I'm trying to do here, even if it's like out of what is typical storytelling perhaps. So I think that's how I grew, was believing in myself and trusting that I could pull off the very big task that was asked of me. Yeah.
Great. Another question here is, aside from the mentors that you've had, who are the filmmakers that most influence you as a creator, which films have you seen that have taught you the most?
Great question. There's this beautiful film called Bombay Beach that I really love by Amar Harrell. That's a really lovely film. Um, there's a director called Jesse Moss. He directed this film called The Overnighters. I love that film. I love a lot, Trouble the Water, which I did work on, but that's just like one of my favorite documentaries of all time. I really, again, like cinema verite and verite storytelling has always been something I've been really drawn to. So I'd say verite films are the thing that, I always would be like fascinated as like in like camera movement and what motivated people to film the things that they were filming. When you're all this stuff is happening around you, what is the thing that makes someone that is a cinematographer land on a certain thing and follow it or move and stuff like that. So that's always been how I've been inspired by films, and some of my favorites of those. Yeah.
Before I go to the next question, just another reminder, if you have any more questions, just send them over. What are you working on now, Nadia?
Sure. So right now I am working on a new documentary about attorney Benjamin Crump. And everyone has probably seen Benjamin Crump on television at some point, especially in the last few months. But he is the lead attorney that is on the legal team for Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, amongst many other cases that he has. And so I'm making a film right now about this moment in time that we're all, you know, seeing these like historical cases and awful tragedies of police brutality happening in the country, and I'm making a film through his perspective. I think he has a very sort of singular perspective, being so close to these particular cases, and also someone who has been a civil rights attorney for quite a long time. He was also um, the lawyer that defended the Trayvon Martin case, and Mike Brown. And again, he's the civil attorney, so he does not work on the criminal side, but he works on the civil cases for these families.
Okay. Um, that's a very serious film that you're working on, which I'm pretty sure presents its own challenges. We have a couple more questions that came through. Are there things that you do to make your subjects comfortable with you filming them?
Yeah, I think I really, again, I just try to be myself, because I think that that's always the best version of ourselves, right? For any of us is to be ourselves and not try too hard. So I'm sort of a shy person, especially around, you know, people I don't know. And I think that's probably why I like cameras, because I can like kind of hide behind them and pop out when I want to. So I'm just myself, and I think that that's just something that people can always kind of connect with and understand. And I think I rely a lot on like body language. It's really hard wearing masks right now and filming, because sometimes just people seeing you smile at them, or you know, kind of have like a friendly face is helpful. But I use a lot of body language to show people how I am kind of presenting myself. You know, I think being filmed is really hard. Like having a camera trained on you like all day long when you're doing every single thing. I can't even imagine. Like I don't think I would ever let anyone film me that intimately. You know, and you're in a viewfinder. You're like looking at every like inch of someone's face and everything that they do, and you know, you learn how they move. It's so interesting. So I think I really love the people that I'm filming. I think having a love for people and a real curiosity is important. I think they feel that energy. And so when you're like staring at them all day, it's not a stare of like scrutiny, but it's like a gaze of like curiosity and love, and trying to understand who someone is. I think I think that for me, that's how I try to make people feel comfortable.
Right. And we have our last question here from a Black documentarian from the Bronx, Leslie. And she's wondering how you prepare to shoot a film, especially in nonfiction. How do you prepare yourself mentally, physically, and potentially spiritually if the material is heavy in subject matter? And there's a second series of questions, so maybe we can tackle that first.
Sure. I think that's a great question. It's probably one of the most important things as far as the work that I do. So, um, physical preparation for me is really important, because, as you know, I also shoot my own film. So I'm carrying heavy things that, even if they're not heavy, like the first 5 minutes you pick them up, like by hour 10, everything feels really heavy. And so I do a lot of yoga, a lot of strength training. And that has helped me be able to continue doing the work that I do, because I have all types of injuries from filming and carrying heavy stuff for like the last 15 years. And that in turn helps me mentally as well. Like meditation is a huge part of my daily routine. And the, you know, just the ability to focus and know where to focus and how to stay calm in situations. You know, I think a lot of filming is, there's so many things happening around you, and your ability to stay calm and stay focused and on task of what it is that you're trying to achieve in that moment is critical, because I there are times when I watch films or footage where I see where someone is like moving the camera too much. And to me, I feel like that person wasn't like clear on the thing that where the story is, right? You want to be clear where the story is happening. And I think meditation really helps me personally be able to lock in on where a story is happening, so that I'm not doing that. Because I do that too. Like, and then I catch myself and I'm like, what are you doing? You need to like focus. Where's the story here? Where's the emotion? And I think meditation really helps me get to that place. And in turn, spiritually, again, like I personally don't make films about people that I don't like, I guess, in some way. Like some people make films about like the worst people in the world or something like that. And I think I make films about people that I want to be around. And it doesn't mean that there isn't complexity to who they are, because no one is perfect. But I think like, I want to spend the next 2 years of my life with this person and with this story. So part of that, like meditation and I guess spirituality, if you will, is coming from a place of love. And even if, again, no one does, no one is perfect, and there's the things that makes these stories interesting is the complexity and the choices that people are forced to make. And so being able to come to witness that without judgment and coming from a place of love, I think is important to me, and how other people see the individuals that I'm filming, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And the second part of Leslie's question is, how have you dealt with difficult instances of capturing moments on the ground when the subject material hits close to home? Have you noticed in your footage a different emotional element visually and technically when you watch back the material that was challenging to experience on the shoot?
That's a great question. I think when things get challenging, I actually become, it's like when you feel an emotion hit your body, I'm like, whoa, something's happening here, and this is really good. Like that's when you're shooting verite, you can shoot for 10 hours a day and nothing happens. So you have to be able to be very patient, and also have like a sensitivity to know that when something is happening, you're not like asleep at the wheel, right? Since nothing happens for such a long time. So it's kind of this calm that I feel like I need to have, but also like highly sensitive, so that when I do feel an emotion that hits close to home, that's when I kind of like kick in and I'm like, this is good. And this is going to be in the film. Like, this is the moment that I've been waiting for all day or all week or all month. And so even if it's emotional, and, I definitely have had times filming Mrs. Obama where I'm like, my tears are falling and they're falling in the viewfinder and it gets all fogged up and I can't see. But I also know that those are going to be the best moments in the film, because if I'm moved in that moment, the audience will most likely be moved as well.
That's great. Okay. Let's see if we have any more in the Q&A. I think that's the last one. My last question is, what is your overall message for aspiring women filmmakers?
Yeah, I mean, I think my overall message is, do not give up on your dreams at all. Like I said, when I started making films, I had family members tell me, you're wasting your time. You're never going to be a filmmaker. Like, get a real job. It just like laugh in my face with the dream that I had. And if that's any way to inspire you to not give up, because, although it was a very, very difficult, long, bumpy, up and down journey for me to get where I'm at, I do feel like a huge sense of satisfaction that I didn't give up on that. And I'm able to live a fulfilling life as a filmmaker and storyteller. And, our stories are really important. And there's so many people that want to hear them. And so just keep making the work, whether you think people see it or not. And that's part of the practice, you know, and I think sometimes that is the thing that everyone can't be a filmmaker. Everyone can be a filmmaker, but the thing that stops people is like, are you willing to keep doing it even when no one's watching, when it's super hard, when there's no one's giving you any money, you're just out there. You know, I remember I used to go out in the street and just film with my camera, and like for nothing. It was just this desire to do it. So I think the idea is just like, don't give up, and keep making your work and telling your stories and what's important to you. And you will break through. You will break through to the place that you're trying to get to.
Great. Thank you so much. To everyone tuning in at home, thank you so much for joining us this evening. And Nadia, thank you for spending your evening with us. Good luck on your projects, and we can't wait to see them. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much. Have a good night.
Have a good evening. Bye.